This episode of The Havery Show is being brought to you by Heartland Tax and Accounting, 863-385-5020. The following program is rated PG and may contain language and material that may be slightly offensive to some audiences. Welcome to episode 3 of The Havery Show. With us today is Greg Griffin, Renaissance man. Hiya, Greg.
What's Renaissance mean?
Oh, you know exactly what a Renaissance man is, and furthermore, you know all the reasons why you are truly and indeed a real Renaissance man.
I'll take your word for it.
You know. Where shall we start? There's so many places that we can start with you. There's so many facets. I've known you for a long time. You are, without a doubt, one of the most interesting people that I've ever met. And we could start in any number of areas. But let's go with the first lightning strike.
Oh, good God.
Because I've never met anyone that was struck by lightning, let alone twice. So let's go to the first one.
It was great. It literally was great. If there were a way to die, that would be it. Because it felt like somebody walked into a room and shut the light switch off. You didn't know it was coming. It was over. And there was no pain associated with it. It was good.
Can you tell us where you were, what you were doing, how it happened?
I was out at the country club kicking a soccer ball around with a couple of kids, and the storm had passed. Another storm was coming, and I think it started to sprinkle a little bit, and more or less out of the blue sky, boom, lights out.
Now, how old were you at this point?
16.
16 years old. You're out kicking a soccer ball. That's one of the most bizarre things I've ever heard. And you're telling me that it was a peaceful experience.
Absolutely. I mean, the light switch literally went off. There was no pain associated with that. And, you know, the euphoria that was associated with what some would probably say being on the other side was phenomenal. There was no fear associated with it, but an adrenaline rush that was, I say, simply indescribable. I spent years after that trying to match it through rock climbing, through paddling, through all kinds of crazy adventure sports, and never matched that type of euphoria without fear. So, you come close to being in a car accident, or you come close to falling and hurting yourself, or some type of an incident where pain would be associated with it. There's that gut wrenching, that just rush, but it's full of fear. It's a reaction. This was that level of adrenaline, but it came with the same calmness of being on a moonlit beach. It wasn't, and in terms of light, I didn't see a tunnel. There was no light at the end of the tunnel, but it was like perfect walk on the beach. There was, it wasn't too hot. It wasn't too cold. It wasn't too bright. It wasn't too dark. It was everything. It was all encompassing, all in one. No beginning.
How long did that last, that euphoria, how long did it last?
It seemed like it lasted forever. There was no time. There was no sense of time. Time didn't matter. So, and then I woke up.
Where did you wake up?
In the field. Someone had done CPR on me. And every time my heart beat, it felt like I had a vice between my ears. And every time it beat, it felt like they twisted the vice. And then I would pass out again. So I begged them to let me sleep. But of course, they aren't going to let you do that. Right. They constantly woke me up and was loaded into ambulance, hauled off to the hospital, and it was an adventure. I mean, it was in and out of consciousness for many hours. The pizza that I had eaten for lunch had turned into charcoal when I got hit. I was just nauseous and vomiting and excruciating headache. It was absolutely miserable. So I went from what I would say would be the best experience on earth that you could ask for to sheer hell in terms of pain. But it's interesting,
to say the least. So you got to experience this not once, but twice.
I've been zapped here and there for little things. When I was in, it's funny, when I was in college, I played soccer, and the kids up there nicknamed me Flash because I figured out after about the second thunderstorm that came along, all my hair would stand up on my head when storms would come close. Coach would send me to the locker room, be like, get off the field. And yeah, just little instances, nothing is serious, but just getting zapped. Fishing, I've been around several times where the braided line that we fish with hums and vibrates in
Really?
the rods because the storms are so close. Yeah, I've done a lot of fishing out of 10,000 Islands, so you're not going to outrun storms there. You're 40, 50 miles south of Chokoloskee, Everglades City, so you kind of grin and bear it. But it's I've been in some pretty interesting scenarios, but didn't have a second direct hit.
Okay.
Yeah, so.
Okay. So that's just part of the urban legend.
That must be the urban legend.
Okay,
Yeah.
gotcha.
So maybe I'm a little less Renaissance now.
Oh, no. You're still full on Renaissance. Nope. There's no getting out of it. You're a human lightning rod.
Yeah. Well, I can sense it. It's interesting to feel temperature changes and the electrical changes. It's certainly an eerie feeling at times, especially the rock climbing, hanging on the side of a rock, and all of a sudden storms start to move in. You can definitely feel the difference in the electricity in the air.
Have you seen any indication that you may or may not have passed that on to one or both of your sons?
No, I mean they both have a healthy respect for lightning, and we're pretty cautious about it. Modern technology makes it a lot easier to track storms and see what they're doing. So if we're out skiing, playing on the water, doing whatever, storms coming, we usually just tuck tail and run before. So, probably the most interesting story. We were out at my mom and dad's house. This was right after Laura and I had been married, and I don't remember what we were doing. We were doing something outside, helping them. And I just looked at Laura and said, it's time to go inside. And she's like, why? And I was like, because there's a storm coming. And she's like, yeah, whatever. And probably 3 minutes later, boom, and it was right there. Yeah. And that was pretty, it's pretty eerie. But I also look at it as a gift,
Absolutely.
Don't try to stop lightning from entering the ground. Could be bad for your health.
Yeah, I would say so. Tell me a little bit about your childhood, your family. You've got a very well-respected family here in Highlands County that goes all the way back, if I may say so, to the Hookers.
Yeah, well, the Hooker family isn't from Highlands County, but the old William Brenton Hooker, the cattle king of Florida, back in the 1800s. They were some of the founding fathers of Tampa, and my grandmother was a Hendry, and her ancestry included the Hooker family, and both cattle barons, cattle kings, and really neat to look at the lineage and see all the folks and anybody that has any of those old names. There are tons of cousins everywhere.
Oh, yeah.
I come across a lot of Hendrys, come across a lot of Albritons, come across a lot. I mean, there's a whole series, the Mizels, Waldrons. They're all intermixed and all over the place through the area. So pretty neat.
Yep. Your father was very, very important in your life.
Yeah, my dad was a cool guy.
He was a cool guy. He looked like the kind of guy. I didn't know him well, but I got to know him a tiny bit, and I got to see him, in church on Sundays. And he looked like the kind of guy that if you crossed him, he'd stick a knife in your throat. But he also seemed like a gentle man at the same time. Am I off base on that?
I don't know that my dad would be one to stick a knife in your throat. He let most stuff roll off his back.
He scared me a little bit.
My dad?
Yeah.
Nah. He was as chill as the day was long.
Okay.
He grew up. He was an incredibly passionate man and grew up in a less. They weren't necessarily poor from the onset, but his dad left him in a time when dads leaving families was really bad, and this was in the early 50s. So, a fatherless child in their young years into their early teens is a challenge for a lot of folks. So, I know he grew up over in Highlands Homes, and with my aunt Norma Jean, and my grandmother was a steadfast Christian woman and just did a great job raising him, did everything she could. But he worked in Pepper's Grocery. When he finished at Pepper's Grocery, went on to graduated from Sebring High School, went on to the Air Force, and he was a boom operator for refuelers, and got a little seat time flying, and He was a playboy. I mean, he had a lot of fun. He he would tell us about the geishas in
Oh,
Japan,
okay.
and how they would take their toes and dig them in between your vertebrae. And I would say, "Is that all they did, Dad?" And he would just that coy little smile
Uh-huh.
that
Oh,
that
yeah.
he kind of tucked off to the side. And
Oh, yeah.
he certainly lived a fascinating life. He'd been all over the world. He'd seen, I think, the good and bad in life, and he learned to love. And that's probably the most important takeaway I got from my dad. Is he was really was, if you got to know him, a salt of the earth guy. And I can't tell you after he passed away how many people came up and would sit with me and chat with me about just random stories that they had, just sitting and talking with him, and some of the random, somewhat and sometimes off-color wisdom that he would share. But he's, I certainly miss him. He passed away about a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, and that was a huge loss for me. And it's one of those things you don't know how important somebody is in your life until they're gone. He'd always been important in my life, but man, the conversations I wish I would have had. And don't get me wrong, we had tons of just awesome conversations about his trips around the world and some of the really cool things that he got to experience. And based on where he started, that really gave me a passion to help other folks be able to experience the world on their own. So, he just gave me a passion for life, and he never held me back. And he would joke, in his older years, he never wanted to leave the house. He had built his paradise, and that's where he wanted to be. But in his younger years, he wanted to set the world on fire. And I think that's where I got that from.
Yeah. That makes a lot of sense. He was a pilot. Did he continue flying after service, or did he let that go?
No, he flew with me several times, but I think he had a dream of having a Piper Cub, and just never got to that point in life. When he came out of the Air Force, he went to work for the Bell Telecoms, and then as they were deregulated, wound up in, which was, I think, United Telecom of Florida. That's how he wound up back in Florida. I mean, a funny story, when he came out of the Air Force, he had bought one of the very first Mustangs. It was a 64 and a half or 63 and a half. They had the half year.
Yeah.
And, people around here who knew him would laugh about that car. Be like, "Oh, yeah, he put cherry packs on it," and you could hear him coming from a mile away, and he got in all kinds of trouble. I think after he wrecked it the third or fourth time, they finally totaled it. But, he had hit a patch of black ice when he was working in Virginia, and it actually knocked his teeth all the way through his sinus cavity when he hit it. But they rebuilt it that time. How he survived that car, nobody knows. But fun stories. I mean, just neat stuff. He always told us about the hazards of drinking and driving, and encouraged strongly against it. But I mean, he survived it. He learned a lot of great lessons, and he passed those on. And I think he created more conservative versions of himself and me and my younger brother.
Yeah. Danny.
Yeah, Danny too. Yeah.
So tell me about your siblings, because I'm not sure that I've known you for a long time, but I still don't think I know the connection and how everything is put together.
Sure. So Danny, who you're referring to, John and Patty, their father had passed away by the time my dad met my mom. Okay. My mom moved up from Miami in the 70s. Her dad was actually a European sales rep for Sikorsky helicopters, so she had been very much aviation-centric her life. Moved up, took over the restaurant at the airport before the import-export business came into full swing, and happened to meet my dad there. And a couple years later, I came into existence. Then I've got a younger brother, Matt.
Yeah.
So
yeah, that's a big family.
Yeah, it's a good
cool.
family. So.
That's cool. This episode of the Havery Show is being brought to you by Heartland Tax and Accounting, 863-385-5020. The flying thing. Did your dad inspire you to fly? What made you decide to go get your license and go get a plane and do all that stuff?
Flying's a very utilitarian thing for me. So it's getting from point A to point B as fast and as efficiently as I can. So for me, it was largely a work-driven decision. There was a time in life where I thought I wanted to fly for airlines. I had this romantic vision of just flying around, and my mom, and I'm thankful for this now, but when she first said it, I was frustrated with her. But she told me, if you go and fly for an airline, you're just going to be a glorified bus driver. And I was like, well, those are some harsh words, Mom.
She's not wrong.
And at the time, they really were. And the reality is the flying that I like to do is two types. I like to get from point A to point B for business purposes, and the other, sometimes it's just great to go fly, and sightsee.
Yeah.
One of the cool aircraft that we have local that's manufactured locally is the AirCam, which is kind of a twin engine, open cockpit, ultralight. And I've flown those, we've flown to the Bahamas, we've flown down to the Keys with them. And, when you can fly 200-300 feet off the ground at 60, 70 miles an hour, it's just absolutely gorgeous. I mean, and you're sitting out in front of the engines. I compare it to being naked on stage. I mean, you're out there in front of God and everybody. So it's a good thing, but absolutely beautiful. I'm scared of heights, absolutely terrified of heights. So when I went to school and I went to college up in North Carolina, and I decided to learn to rock climb. So conquering your fears and dealing with them has been a big thing for me. Mm-hmm. And anxiety is a challenge. So if you can control those fears and you can kind of find the source of those fears, and are they rational and practical? Sure, being scared of heights is definitely a rational and practical fear. But being able to manage that fear enables you to go a lot further in life. So flying was kind of also part of that. I mean, I like flying at 5, 6, 10,000 feet where the ground isn't necessarily in perspective. It's
Yes.
not in a great perspective. Flying a few hundred feet off the ground can get a little nerve-wracking at times, but it's fun.
How high can you get up there? And the things that you're piloting.
Well, the sky's the limit, Harry.
Okay, smart Alec.
So it depends on the type of aircraft that you're flying.
that you've flown. How high have you flown?
16, 18,000 feet. It's pretty standard. I mean, you can fly that in turbocharged, single engine planes pretty comfortably.
So this is something I've always wanted to ask, and you're probably not going to be able to answer me this one.
But why are you asking me?
Well, because I'm going to take a shot at it. So at what point during your training to become a pilot do they take you in the back room and make you sign the piece of paper swearing that you will never divulge that the earth is actually flat?
I can neither confirm nor deny the allegation, Senator. No.
I'm not even kidding. I've become a little bit of a flat earther.
Well,
I'm open to it. I'm really open to it. And I've seen some good arguments. One of the arguments I've seen, Greg, are pilots who get interviewed by people with their phones. And they ask when they're up there if they can see curvature. And the pilots, one after the other, are saying, no curvature. It's flat. It's flat. It's flat. It's flat. Now that's just a handful of guys.
are they on a drug testing protocol?
Well, I've seen some pretty cool evidence that's enough to make me scratch my head and wonder. And also, there's no question that our government's been lying to us for decades and decades and decades about all sorts of various sundries. So why not?
We're not going to talk about aliens, are we?
I mean, we could.
Well, back to the flat Earth theory. I don't think you have to leave the ground to, well, I guess you do technically have to leave the ground to dispel that rumor. Go offshore, 40, 50 miles on a calm day and watch a boat come across the horizon towards you. You can see it rise and fall.
Yeah, I've seen that argument, but I've also seen the new Nikon P1000 camera, what they're able to see that you're not supposed to see because you can calculate the curvature of the Earth and what you're supposed to be able to see and what you're not supposed to be able to see. So I don't know. I'm not saying I'm a flat earther. I'm just saying that I'm open.
Well, sure, it's not all just a sim. Is this not the Matrix?
Now we're talking about a whole different thing. So along those lines, if you want to go down that rabbit hole, along those lines, apparently, do you remember the Sims video game?
Vaguely.
Yeah. So you have characters that you create, and they walk around in their own worlds and whatnot. So the creators of that are coming up with a version where those characters become sentient, and they can make their own decisions. They can decide where they're going to work, if they're going to start a family. All of the decisions that you and I make, these computer-generated characters will be able to make in the newer versions of The Sims. Elon Musk has recently said it's just a matter of logic that As our technology improves, so will our ability to create these video games and characters that become more and more and more and more lifelike.
Well, the more efficient technology becomes, the more rapidly it will grasp the ability to learn. And
Absolutely.
once technology has the ability to learn, it will surpass us.
I think we're there. I think we're on the cusp of that right now.
Yeah. I mean, I always dream, in my struggles in my construction world with labor force. I always cut up as soon as Elon comes up with one of these robots. I'm going to buy one and ask him if he can implant a chip so that it can shadow me for a year or two and learn everything that I know. And then it can teach all of it. So it can just download one of the
Neuralink.
fantasies I have is taking a USB chip out of the back of my head and downloading the 47 years of life's knowledge that I have. And, my kids get to see it firsthand. They get to live what we do, and they become very proficient operators.
Absolutely.
And they're great at running boats, and they've spent plenty of time in planes and whatnot. But the reality is, as soon as we can replicate our knowledge and provide it in something that has the dexterity that we have and the ability to utilize logic, we've surpassed ourselves. It's gone.
He's already done that to an extent with Neuralink.
Yeah.
And the very thing you're talking about of being able to have a robot assistant who is tapped into your learning system in your own brain, you're basically creating a version of yourself to do all the things that you need to do so that you can go off and do all the stuff you want to do with your wife and kids.
It begs the question: what is the purpose of life, or the meaning of life? And I saw one of the best answers I've ever seen. It was ridiculously simple. It was to be alive.
Well, yeah.
So, you hear people talk about universal basic income, and we're going to work ourselves out of jobs, or we're going to automate ourselves out of jobs. The human psyche is dependent on purpose.
Absolutely.
And if we don't function, we don't have a purpose, then we get depressed and we commit suicide, or we die. I know society and the Industrial Revolution has taught people to work towards retirement because retirement is this great reward. But so many people retire and die within days or weeks of retiring because they've lost their sense of purpose. I've never been a huge proponent of retirement. Personally, I don't know that I'll ever retire. I'll change the scenery a little bit. I love what I do. I found my passion in life. And it just frankly doesn't make sense to me. But having the ability to simplify my life while still finding purpose and meaning and still helping, I think will go a long way. It's definitely a double-edged sword because yes, we can automate ourselves out of jobs. We're going to have to find something else for the human race to do because driving a nail or pouring concrete or cleaning the house will likely be an obsolete practice in the coming decades.
I agree. You said something that caught my ear. You love what you do. You do a lot, Greg. So let's talk a little bit about all the different hats that you wear. Well, start anywhere you want. Pick one. You're wearing your Bayhead consulting shirt. Start there.
So, which iteration? We do a bunch of stuff. In the for-profit sector, we have construction, we have architecture, we have civil engineering, we have environmental consulting. We do. I serve as the building official and a contract building official for the city of Sebring. We've got an aquatic plant management company. We do a lot of state, a lot of local jobs. We do some federal jobs. We've worked for Department of Defense. We've worked for a series of different folks. My passion and my strength in the construction and engineering world and even architecture world is finding those projects that people either don't want to mess with, or it's too, it has too many variables to just simply check in and build a box. I'm not a build a box kind of guy. I love to solve problems, and I love to take a project that's challenging and bring it to the finish line. I have crazy ADHD, so sitting still and doing one thing, repetitively just doesn't fit my world. And the irony of my companies is everything that I do is a result of one of my clients finding a need, either getting in trouble for one thing or another, and the other, the backside of that is service. I like to think about the Rotary phrase, service above self,
Yes.
and I was the accumulation of wealth at a younger point in life was always fascinating to me, but the monetary side of that doesn't have as much reward as the philanthropic side. So being able to help people, whether it's through building something that services folks or creating opportunities for folks, is where I've really found a lot of personal pride and joy. We've been able to do some really neat projects that have helped folks out and continue to do so. One of the fun things we built was the EAA hangar out at the airport.
Tell me about that. I'm fascinated by that.
Yeah, so was a gentleman named James Ray. He was an oil guy out of Texas, but he was a World War II bomber pilot, and he had done very well in life. He's based out of Naples. He had hooked up with Phil Lockwood, and I don't know the backstory of how they met, but he funded an aviation building up in Lakeland at Linder, where Sun and Fun is, and through relationships with John Roush, Phil Lockwood, Dr. Owen, Ron Owen was running the EAA chapter at the time. They had discussed the possibility of creating a center for kind of youth aviation education out at the airport. And Dr. Owen's been a good friend of mine for years. Was asked if I'd be interested in building it. Absolutely, I'd be interested in building it, because I've done a lot of youth centric stuff. I've been very fortunate to be able to contribute to the younger folks of this community. In the Ray Foundation funded the materials for the building, and we got a lot of community support. We were the general contractor on it. The building was built for $0, from government or any other type of subsidy. The money was all donated from the Ray Foundation, donated from local folks, and now there's 50 high school kids from around the county that are out there on the program, and they're out there every day. One of the cool things, I think we've got kids that have gone to the major academies. We've got kids at Embry-Riddle, and I believe we have kids at NASA. And these are kids. Years ago, I worked with Youth for Christ in the community, and seeing the demographic of some of the kids here is heartbreaking. I grew up in a comfortable family. We're by no stretch of the imagination wealthy, but I was insulated from a lot of the stuff. You'd hear bad stuff that went on. But as I started working in the YFC world, I saw a lot of the kids. We would do, you've been part of it. We would do Friday night meals or something for these kids. And there'd be kids that would literally take food home because that was all the food they were going to get for the weekend. Having my kids are on planes all the time. They're in and out of airports. They don't understand the concept of that gate. There are a lot of kids, and to me, I look at that gate as kind of a barrier, as a wall. A lot of those kids wouldn't have the opportunity to go inside that fence unless they were getting on a commercial flight to go somewhere. In my earlier years, also I had a charter that with a buddy of mine, Steve Copeland, that we call the Right Side. We would take kids fishing offshore, and believe it or not, Highlands County, we're 100 miles away from water. Yep. There are kids in this county that never seen the ocean. Yeah. It's just I couldn't at that time grasp that concept. So the aviation program was an opportunity for kids in the high schools to be able to go into those programs. Some of them came from great families, that are not great families, but families that had means. But there are kids out there that also likely wouldn't have those opportunities. It's open to anybody. They can apply and go through the proper course, and they can get their pilot's license. They can get their AMP, which is airframe and power plant mechanics license. So there are real opportunities for kids in this community to go out and become licensed, skilled labor. That can really do something with their life.
Why don't you can you share how to get a hold of? Say the name of the business again that's doing this.
So, the Experimental Aircraft Association, Heartland EAA Chapter 1240, is kind of the parent of that program. The school board has the programs. It's part of the STEM, science, technology, engineering, and math programs at the schools. So they would just need to reach out to their guidance counselor.
Okay.
And
Is that something kids reach out for? Or is that something the teachers are on the lookout and they say this kid would excel in this program?
I think a little bit of both.
Okay.
And I think one of the cool things that EAA does is every month they have a pancake breakfast out there, and I think every other month they have a program called Young Eagles. Young Eagles enables kids from the community. They can come out, sign up, and then go for a plane ride. And for a lot of these kids, that's their first exposure to being in an aircraft at all, more or less, a big aircraft or a small aircraft. And it's neat. When I've flown some Young Eagles flights, it's a lot of fun. I usually take kids up, we'll fly them over their house and kind of show them where their school is and show them where their lake is. And I mean, it just takes their life and just opens up their perspective to things. And
Amazing.
it's kids who grow up in the proverbial box sometimes don't look out that window and see that there's a whole world outside. And this is an opportunity for them to look out the window. And the reality is, I saw another great quote. It's something along success is a result of your efforts, but so is failure. So, a lot of these kids, they don't know that they can go and do these things, but if they want it, put the effort forth and you'll find a way. If you want something bad enough, the human psyche is strong enough to get you there.
Absolutely.
And you just have to get up when you get knocked down. I mean, I've failed tons of times in life.
Yeah.
You brush it off and keep going.
What about kids that are in either homeschool or private school type thing? Are they eligible too, or how would they get involved in that?
Yeah, so there's an avenue. There's an avenue for kids to definitely do the Young Eagles stuff. The high school programs, they'd have to reach out. I think Michael Halpern is the lead for that, but I'm certain there are accommodations to make those programs available. In fact, we're gonna do some fundraising pushes in the EAA so that we can expand that program and make it more available to more folks throughout the community.
Very cool. I was at the city council meeting last night, and they talked about this brand new. When I say brand new, I think they said it's the first time in 80 years that the FAA has
The flight category.
a new flight category.
Right. So you have fixed wing, you have rotor, which is aircraft, and they have these eVTOLs. So basically, almost like drone technology that we see, but they're vertical takeoffs and landings, electrical. And they're small footprint, limited range, electric vehicles that for a community like ours would be very useful. You think about driving from here to Orlando International Airport now. What used to be an hour and 30-minute drive is now a 2.5-hour drive if the traffic on I-4 is not absolutely miserable. Believe it or not, flying out of Sebring, I can fly from Sebring to Orlando International, and it takes me about 22 minutes to get there.
Is that right?
Yeah. So the eVTOLs do the same thing. That aircraft, you'd go out to the airport at this point where they're building that base or proposing it, and hop on it. And it can go to any of the regional airports, and also international. So local to us would be Orlando, would be Palm Beach, Fort Myers, which is regional Southwest, Punta Gorda, St. Pete, Tampa, Bradenton, Sarasota, Bradenton. I mean, there's a series of airports that would be easily reached from here. And, travel times, if those are flying 120, 130 miles an hour, you're there in a half an hour instead of being there in, 2.5 hours, 3 hours. Interesting concept, though, is as we create the efficiency in travel, the reality is with technology, I think travel is becoming less and less required, at least for work. I can't tell you where I used to have to go to sites. Today was a good example. I mean, we've got a project with a state agency down in South Florida. Normally, I would make a day trip out of that. I'd either fly down there or I'd drive down there, meet with the client and look at the project and come back. Today we had a Zoom call. We were done in 9.5 minutes. We covered everything we needed to do because everything's digital on the call. So our efficiency's gone way up.
Oh yeah.
So it'll be interesting to see how all that stuff blends, whether it's going to be travel, where travel for businesses is cut back and we focus more on personal and pleasure type trips, or if business really does demand that in-person touch.
That's going to be that whole experimental aircraft thing is going to be another whole system for your students to get involved in. And brother, there's going to be a need for technicians who know how to work on that stuff.
Absolutely. And we already use drone technology pretty heavily.
Sure.
I mean, in my inspection world, I use drones. We've got a drone with thermal technology. In the agricultural world, we've got, in the spray company, you've got drones that are capable of delivering herbicides, pesticides, fertilizers, whatever. So the old dusty crop hoppers of the world, they're not obsolete yet, but there will be a time where you show up at a field with a line of drones on a trailer. You push a button and they go and take care of themselves. I mean, crop dusting. Yeah. One of my dearest friends is a crop duster, and he reminds me, because I told him when the economy was terrible, I'm like, hey Ramka, I said I think I could do that. I mean, yeah, they make a significant amount of money. He goes, it's too dangerous, Greg. I love you. You're a great pilot, but you have kids and you have a wife. I don't want to see you do that.
Yeah.
And that kind of puts it in perspective. So if you don't have to put people's lives on the line, I mean, it makes things a little easier. Now, I'm not going to tell any crop duster that they're going to be out of business. I'm not interested in that at all.
Oh yeah, no.
They'll come with torches. No.
Yeah, they will.
But the technology is certainly going that way. The challenge. You look at today's technology. Some of that old technology, whether it be the guys that used to race the open wheel cars that had no power steering, to the folks who flew the old, the Stearmans, or even before that, the planes. There's an art to doing that stuff, and I'm afraid we're starting to lose some of that art. The stick and rudder skills. Sure. with flying a plane. I mean, that's a real art to be able to fly an aircraft with all the automation, and we've got, even in the private plane or private world, you can push a button on several different versions of aircraft, and God forbid something happened to the pilot, that plane will return to base. It'll land on its own.
Yeah.
So it's
incredible.
Yeah, a couple $1,000,000, and I mean, you have all the safety you want. So,
this episode of The Havery Show is being brought to you by Heartland Tax and Accounting, 863-385-5020. Rumor has it, feel free to either confirm or deny this rumor. Rumor has it you're a bit of an author, a quiet author.
I may have written here or there.
Would you like to leave it at that?
Maybe one day I'll dispel the rumor.
Okay.
But no, I mean, I really enjoy writing. I had a teacher, actually not a teacher. She was a professor. I went to school in North Carolina, a little school called Brevard, but she had spent time at Oxford, and she really inspired me to write. Mm-hmm. I was in English, and there was a fellow by the name of Fred Chapin, and he had come to speak at our school, and just told a story about his life. And it wasn't some fantastical story. It was a warm and homely and wonderful story. I mean, it was just nice. It was the way that written, it was inspiring. Those two experiences kind of inspired me to journal, and then to write for myself. And, through some of my travels and some of my experiences, the good, the bad, the ugly, and the indifferent, I've written quite a bit, and people may read it and they'll never know who it is. And that's the fun and exciting thing about being able to write, especially from behind the veil. Part of the interesting thing is you can have relationships with folks of all walks of life, and we measure the safety that we have because society is going to judge us instantly.
Always does, always has.
If you can remain behind that veil, your bravery, it's valiant. I mean, so yes, I enjoy writing. Maybe one day you'll figure out who it is, but for now, it's best kept under wraps.
Fair enough. I was talking to Mayor Shoup yesterday on episode 2 of the podcast, and he said something, and I agree 100%, that there's just something innate inside of the human being that has to create something.
Absolutely.
And it's such an important part of the human experience. And how many people are missing out, either because when they were coming up through school, the teacher said you have to do this a certain way and you can't color outside the lines, and red roses are red and green leaves are green. And that affects children sometimes for their entire lives. And they can get scarred, they can get hurt, and they can sometimes never take a chance because of things like that.
In my youngest years, I was actually held back in kindergarten and had to go to school psychiatrist, psychologist, whatever it would have been at that time. And my parents were called to the school for this big to do because I had drawn a picture of my family. And I drew my dad as not having any hair, and my dog as having long hair, and my brother is a squirrely little brat. And, well, maybe not that part. And my mom is normal. And, they just couldn't grasp that my dad was bald and my dog was an Irish setter. So I was just portraying in the most innocent sense what my world was. Mm-hmm. And I remember that was, and my parents obviously didn't tell me about it at the time, but in later years, that was a point of great consternation because of the ramifications of dealing with psychiatrists. This was in the early 80s, mm-hmm. where the psychiatrists were kind of, very much in play. I've never been one to color inside the lines, and it gets me in trouble sometimes. But the roses just don't smell the same inside the fence.
They don't.
They say the grass is green. The grass is greener on the other side. I mean, the reality is it's all grass. But sometimes the view on the other side is a little better. It's with my kids, and I have this ongoing dialogue with my wife. We have two boys, Elijah and Liam. Elijah has Noonan syndrome, and Elijah is also one that has never, ever, ever colored inside the box. Mm-hmm. But one of the happiest kids you'll ever come across.
Absolutely.
And an incredibly skilled kid. His cardiologist, this gentleman's named Dr. Dedlani, gave us the best advice any doctor could have ever given us. And he said, your child's going to have challenges in life. And this was when everything was shocking to us. As a parent, everybody around you has this child that has no problems, and all of a sudden you're told yours does. But the advice he gave us was for us, it changed everything. Don't treat him any different.
Yeah.
So at the age of 11, Elijah had his boater's license.
Mm-hmm.
He's been running heavy equipment since he was probably 5.
Yeah.
Proficiency, not so much until he got a little older. But he had a great fascination for learning. And the biggest thing is he had a capacity to learn, and he had just a hunger to learn. And we were at the boat show, Miami Boat Show, when Mercury had come out with their new 600 horsepower engine, which is just huge for an outboard boat. And we were there with one of our product lines, but the boys, they like to tag along and see all the new boats and dream about all the cool stuff that's out there. And the Mercury rep was explaining to one of the guys about the rep or about one of the customers about one of the engines. And he goes, I'm going to have to go ask somebody that question. Elijah just spit the answer out. I don't recall what it was. And the guy turns around and looks at him. He's like, huh? He goes, you're right. And it's that desire to just gain knowledge. And that's the big thing. One of the things my dad also taught us, and it was before North Face made it a logo, but never stop exploring, never stop learning. That ability to explore, that ability to learn, and just that hunger for knowledge is pretty awesome.
Yeah.
So,
I haven't told you this. Everything I needed to know about your family, I found out in about 4 seconds. Right after the hurricane, it might have been the same day or the day after, but it was right near when Hurricane Milton went through. And I was on my way somewhere. I was driving on Lakeview Drive, and I just glanced over to the left, and there was Laura and your 2 kids out in somebody else's yard picking up debris. And I thought, you know what? That's a great family.
It's a service thing, man.
Yeah.
One of the things my dad, it was kind of cool. At Christmas or birthdays, he never, ever wanted a gift. Mm-hmm. And he always taught us, you always get more from giving than you ever will from receiving.
100%.
And, just that heart of gratitude and that ability to give and share and love on other people has just been something that's stuck with us. And, sometimes my kids go out there a little begrudging, but at the end of the day, they see the value in it and the gratitude for folks that they're helping and working with that wouldn't be able to or don't have the time or don't have the physical ability or anything else. It's important, One of my biggest struggles with society is some of the complacency that we've created, and we made everything so easy. I see people throw stuff on the ground. How hard is it to put your stuff in a trash can?
Exactly.
How hard is it to stop and pick something up? How hard is it to open a door? We've lost. People say chivalry. How hard is it to be kind, to be a good neighbor, to help people out? It's. I just the world makes me sad sometimes because it doesn't take that much effort. And at the end of the day, and we'll talk about neurochemistry. You go and do something good for somebody, you're going to get a dopamine boost. It's going to feel good for you.
That's right.
So why not?
Why not is right. It's free, it's cheap, and it's easy.
Absolutely.
And everybody wins. Kindness is one of those rare qualities where when one person exhibits it to other people, everybody wins. Beautiful thing, really.
Absolutely.
Tell me a little bit about the park, what you're doing out there.
The park.
Are you allowed to have any NDAs? Are you allowed to talk about it?
No, we can talk about it. So the Institute of the Park is called an alternative type school. So they use the Waldorf curricula. It's very much an experiential education facility. Now, experiential education is kind of close to my heart. I went to school, started a JDMD program to do medical school and law school, and came to the realization that I would neither be trapped in a courtroom or in a hospital. I can't sit still that long. But I did have a want and need to go and do expeditionary type medicine. So I changed my major into wilderness leadership and experiential education. That experiential component, learning by doing, is huge. And I think one of the things that our school system today struggles with so much on a national basis is applied learning. The park is a unique school in that you're in the woods. You're learning science through being in that environment. You're learning mathematics through being in that environment. You're learning writing, and you're finding inspiration by being in a natural environment. Small class sizes, a really cool campus. You probably not many schools in the country that would be anything remotely close to it. But a great opportunity for kids that are excelled learners, and also a great opportunity for kids that have challenges. From my perspective, again, it's pouring back into that next generation, giving them the opportunity to learn. Not every young person learns the same way. Some folks learn coloring by numbers. Some folks are natural born Picassos. Mm-hmm. So it's going to be an absolute asset for the community, and I'd encourage people to go check it out.
I've done a little bit of work out there with music. I've done a couple events, and I was blown away by just the cool factor of that place. And I thought, man, how wonderful, to be one of those lucky kids that gets to experience this type of learning.
Absolutely.
Just absolutely amazing kind of stuff going on out there.
Yeah, I suspect in short order they will have a capacity issue.
Oh, I don't doubt that for a second. Yeah. This episode of The Havery Show is being brought to you by Heartland Tax and Accounting, 863-385-5020. Let's play a game. I'll throw out some different things, and you just respond with maybe a few words. Let's just be like a lightning round kind of.
So I've been too wordy. Wow, lightning, nice pun.
Aha! You caught that, didn't you? Twice. Or was it twice?
It's the first time.
Yeah. So we've already talked about one, so we'll skip flat Earth. So let's move on to aliens.
Absolutely.
You want to elaborate at all?
No, there's no doubt in my mind.
Yeah, me either.
The mathematical probability of us not having some other form of life, it's probably Possibly, probably nothing like we would expect, but you know, we would like to think that the universe is where the darkness ends. The problem is we can't see the end of the darkness.
Mm-hmm.
So, it, I cannot in my mind conceptualize. That was one of the great things my dad, and I know I go back to him all the time. He was just he was a great light in my life. But at a young age, we had telescopes,
Yes.
and we would look at the rings of Saturn. We would look at different planets. We'd look at the craters on the moon. Big thing when I was a kid was Halley's Comet.
Oh, yeah.
And that's how I knew Mark Twain and Huckleberry Finn and all that stuff. I mean, it was all tied to astronomy and in space. And we had great TV shows. We had Star Trek. We had Star Wars, which were so
Star Wars,
futuristic.
yes.
And we had The Last of the Starfighters.
Yeah.
And I was just praying somebody would come pick me up because I knew I could fly that thing just as good as he did. So I may have a romantic version of it. I don't know. The reality is survival is of the fittest. Yeah. So it could be something that could consume. And I know we've joked in past times about the Twilight Zone now serving humans.
Yes. Oh, yes.
So you just don't know. I mean, you could have both sides of the coin. But yeah, I mean, my expectation, even if it's in the microbial form, there's absolutely life.
Don't even
on this planet.
When you said microbial, I can't tell you how many times I've thought about scale and how easy it would be for planet Earth to be an atom in somebody's skin cell on the bottom of their foot, and how plausible that really is.
Yeah. So after I was hit by lightning, some of my writings took a creative turn, and one of the theories I had in my mind about our existence, and this was probably slightly before or slightly after the movie Inner Space. I don't know if you remember that, but is that we're all on a sliding scale. Planet Earth is maybe just a cell inside of a larger being, which in and of itself is nothing more than a cell inside of another larger being.
Yes.
And as we go infinitely larger, we also go infinitely smaller. I love thinking about those things. Most people, it terrifies for some reason, but the reality is we can't understand. We don't have the capacity at this juncture to understand the hows and the whys. But it sure is neat to wonder.
It really is.
So I guess I'm going to ask a question for you.
Okay.
Do you think the human race could handle the truth?
No. Not
at large.
At large, no. At large, no. There are some of us who have made it their life's passion to seek the truth. And for those of us, and I would include you in that too, for those of us who are hungry for the truth, we welcome it, even if it's a hard truth. And I have a notion that the truth would be a hard truth.
So second question, red pill, blue pill?
Well, it's been a while since I've seen The Matrix, but I don't want to go back to sleep. I don't want to forget everything. I want to experience all of it. Now, is that a red or a blue? Because I don't remember.
I don't remember, but I want the truth.
Yeah, count me in on the truth. For me personally, there is no greater quest than the quest for truth, wherever it leads. That's just me.
I agree. Unfortunately, I can't say we're being fed, but it seems as if the turn of society is towards nothing but satiation in the world of pleasure and getting lost in thought.
Mm-hmm. We're being entertained to death, literally, and we're all walking to that death on our own volition.
I find comedy when I try to watch a movie with my kids at the house. They've either got YouTube up within 3 minutes of the movie starting. You pull up. I like to watch old movies with them so they can experience. E.T., The Goonies, some of the cool stuff that we had as kids, and they actually will sit through those. But you have to take their phones away. You have to take them away from any any type of distraction outside of that world. You know, we go to the movie theater. That actually, and we've gotten to the point with my mom. We'll go to the movie theaters and watch a movie on a Sunday afternoon sometimes, and we actually sit and watch a whole movie. But outside of that, these kids don't watch a TV show. You know, we had 30 minutes of Gilligan's Island, or we had 30 minutes of Scooby-Doo, or 30-minute, and they were 30-minute increments, and it would hold our attention for the 30 minutes.
Absolutely it would.
These kids can't watch a YouTube short that exceeds 45 seconds because it didn't deliver enough dopamine instantly. That's it. They're swiping away.
It's heartbreaking. It's heartbreaking.
Yeah.
And you know what? I'm addicted to my phone.
We all are.
I'm addicted to it. And there's been so many times I've tried to break that addiction, and I put it off till tomorrow because I really need the phone for this or for this or for this. I'm embarrassed by that, but I am addicted to that phone. And listen, man, it's by design. The people who are giving us this, they know what they're doing with it. They know what they want to do with us, and we're all going gleefully along with it. You know what? It's going to take an EMP or something like that to shake everything up enough to reset us.
It is. You know, my wife and I don't know, it was her, well, we'll just call it her 38th birthday because 38's great. Not too long ago, like this year. And she finally decided after 16 years of not taking any individual trips outside the state without the kids that she would go on a trip with me. And she decided she wanted to go horseback riding out west. And I said, okay, you want to go fly fishing too? And she's like, yeah, that'd be awesome. So we went out to Montana and Wyoming to fly fish. Well, interesting thing about Yellowstone, your cell phone doesn't work in most places there. So we literally had 3 days of digital detox.
Yes.
And you want to talk about awesome?
Yep.
Now, habitually, instinctively, I kept reaching for my phone to check something because I get 300 emails a day and 500 texts a day and 100 phone calls a day. But it was really nice. My stress level came down. My life was great, you know. Unfortunately, as soon as we got cell phone back, the hurricane was coming in and our phones blew up for all of our clients that needed stuff to be taken care of. But we had landed. It was sometime after midnight, and we're leaving Orlando International Airport and getting ready to drive home. Getting out to pay for our parking, and some guy had pulled into the SunPass lane without SunPass, and it's 5 cars deep. And she can see my head starting to explode. She goes, the whole time you were in Montana, you never got upset about anything. I was like, it's because I had nothing to be upset about. And so I have this ongoing joke with her. And, she was a dental hygienist for decades. And then she decided to come to work in the companies. But when she didn't have any idea what the stress level was in the company, I'd always say, one of these days I'm just going to sell it all. I'm going to buy a sailboat. I'm going to go sail around the world. And I watched several different folks that there's a couple called La Vagabond, that have literally done that. They live by sailing around the world. And I'm never getting on a sailboat. I'm never getting on a sailboat. Now she's like, we might be getting closer to that. Get closer to that boat. So it's tough to see.
It really is. When Milton came through and we lost power for a few days and lost all my cell service for a couple days, it was delightful. It was delightful. Yeah, it was hot. Well, guess what? I grew up at 618 South Commerce Avenue. There was no air conditioning in that house. Yeah. There were no ceiling fans in that house. It was hot. But guess what? You woke up on a hot July day and you went out with your friends and you played all day long and you played until it got dark, and then you went home to a hot house and you jumped in a cold shower. And 5 minutes after your shower, you were hot again. And that's just how it was. Greg, I'll put myself in front of the line here, but we have become soft. We have become weak. I'm the first one to admit it. You take away our creature comforts and we become babies. It's amazing. And don't think that that's not by design.
Listen. When the most important thing during COVID and during the last hurricane was toilet paper.
Yes, yes.
People, I like to, and And my writings in this won't give much away because I don't use it a lot, but I talk about us being grossly human, the suffering from the human condition, and that grossly being both gross in totality and being gross and disgusting.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, we're we're colorful creatures.
Yes, we are. Back to the lightning round, then we'll call it a night.
All right.
Hollow Earth.
Hollow Earth. Absolutely not.
Have you ever heard of or looked up Admiral Byrd?
I can't say that I have. I mean, I think the last thing I thought about the center of the earth was the journey to the center of the earth. And I remember that was 20 years old, I think, when I was born. So,
Is that H.G. Wells? I can't remember.
Yeah, I think so. The earth has a molten core.
Okay. Well, all right.
That's what the science books told me.
I
like that. I like that Kool-Aid.
Oh, yeah. You like that Kool-Aid. Well, okay. I would like to.
I have to have some constants in my life here.
Yeah, I get that. And I think we all do as humans. We need to have a rock and an anchor. I get that.
It's a molten core, actually.
Okay. I would really like you to spend 10 minutes one day looking up Admiral Byrd.
Okay.
And then
I'll report back.
we'll have another talk on that on the Thursday at lunch.
Cool.
Yeah. So Admiral Byrd, Hollow Earth. JFK. Who killed JFK?
Highly accelerated lead killed JFK.
Logical answer.
Who pulled the trigger? There's so many different elements that could have pulled that trigger. The irony of Lee Harvey Oswald's being dispatched nearly immediately after he were brought in for question shouldn't be set aside. So that certainly creates cause for questioning. Who did it? The Cubans, the mafia. Who knows?
All of the above.
The government.
All of the above, maybe.
Aliens.
Maybe. That's what I love about this point in my life is that I'm open to everything. All things, even alien involvement in the JFK shooting. I'm open to it. I'm not closing any doors anymore.
As I've aged, and I would like to say matured, but most people would argue that, I would certainly say the number of absolutes in my world have diminished.
Yeah.
So, I mean, are we in the Matrix?
Are we? Is it a simulation? Is this real? Is this just fantasy? Is this the real life? Is this just fantasy? Well, I guess what that does is leaves us an opening for a part 2, and
Cool.
we can delve deeper. By then, you'll have had a chance to look up Admiral Byrd. Maybe I'm sure you know about MK Ultra, but we can talk about that. Maybe we can go off the rails a little bit on our next talk.
Sounds fun.
Maybe by then you'll be able to reveal your pen name.
Highly unlikely.
Greg Griffin, my friend, it's been a pleasure having you on the podcast. I'll see you at lunch real soon.
Cool.
Love you, man.
Love you too, bud. Thanks for having me.
You got it. Later. The Havery Show has been brought to you by Heartland Tax and Accounting, 863-385-5020.